WordPress is great, but sometimes it's even too complicated for clients. Us as a developer and a person who uses WordPress all the time, it's really simple, but not for others. Sometimes you need a more unique solution for your client. And one thing you can do is you can connect to a Google Sheet and use a Google Sheet as a database for your WordPress site. Now, you won't want to use this for everything, but let's say you have a client that has some pricing on the site and they want to be able to quickly edit the pricing on the site that's displayed on the page. Well, what you can do is you can connect to a Google Sheet and allow them to make edits using that Google Sheet and display it on the site. So what this tutorial is going to do is it's going to show you how to make a connection between Google Sheets and your WordPress site. And this is more of a proof of concept, and it's not going to go super in depth, but just showing you how to set up the basics. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have a Google Sheet with some data on it. So you'll notice that I have this sheet with some pretty simple information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an API key by going to cloud.google.com. Now here you'll see that there's a button when you're logged in that says get started for free. If you go through that, it's going to ask you to set up an account and add a credit card. Google Sheet should have a free version of it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to click on console up here, and that should bypass some of that for me. All right, so here it should be a screen like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a project for this by selecting on that drop down, and I'm going to click on new project, and I'm going to name it My Test Connection. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit create. So while this is being created, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Google Sheet, and I'm going to change this setting, the share, to, I'm going to change this to anyone with links. So I'm going to make this public so anyone can view the data on here. Then I'm going to hit done. All right. So now hopefully by then it's done. So it does. So I'm going to click on select project, and it's going to go to this My Connection. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my API key by clicking on the hamburger and going down to API and credentials. So while this is loading, okay, so from here, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be using auth-o. I'm going to be using a simple API token. I'm going to click on create credentials and then click on API key to create my Google Cloud Credential API token. So you're going to have a unique one. Mine's going to be blurred out so that way you don't use it. And then you're going to want to copy that. And you don't have to click that restrict button. I accidentally did that, so I'm going to hit cancel. So you can go ahead and click out of there, and you should have your API key. Next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to enable the API for Google Sheets. So in the search bar above, I'm going to type in Google Sheets API. And this is what we're going to be using to connect to our WordPress install. So I'm going to go ahead and click enable. All right, so now after this is enabled, we should hopefully have everything we need in order to connect to this Google Sheet. I have my Google API key, and I also have the sheet and the sheet name, which we're going to be using later on, and I'll show you how to get that. All right, so what we're going to do is you'll see that I have a basic WordPress install, and I'm running the latest 2020 theme, and I have my IDE open, and it's whatever IDE of your choice. I am using VS Code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to navigate to my theme. Now, this isn't the best way to do it. you would actually want to be doing this code probably in a plugin. And I'm going to be making a series on how to create a plugin. Or if you're going to edit your theme, you're going to want to make sure that this is a child theme. Now you'll notice that this isn't a child theme if you're a WordPress developer. And if you don't know what a child theme is, you'll want to look that up. But essentially you want to put this into a child theme if you are modifying one of these themes, so that way the functionality stays there whenever you update the theme. And I would recommend putting this into a plugin because a plugin can move between themes. But we're just going to be using the 2020 theme. So I'm going to open up my 2020 theme and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the functions.php. Now this is where my proof of concept is going to live. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where I'm going to be applying some new code all the way down. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function and I'm going to type out function. Let me zoom in a little bit first to make this a bit easier. All right, so I'm going to create a PHP function and I'm going to call it get Google Sheet Data. And in there, what I'm going to do for this function is I'm going to be passing in a query. And then in my query, what I'm going to do is I'm going to return a result. So that's just how I like to set it up. And I don't have a result set up yet, so I'm going to set my results. I'm going to name it plural, sorry about that, because it's more than one result. Let's say false. Okay, so I have this function. It's called get Google Sheet Data. It's going to query for something, and right now all it's returning is false. It's not returning anything. So first thing I need to do is I need to create a connection to my Google Sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable called connection, and I'm going to make it equal to a WP remote get. So WP remote get, what it does is it goes ahead and it basically goes out, grabs data from a website and brings it back. So in this WP remote get, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a URL here. And I'm going to say https sheets.googleapis.com. And then I'm going to say v4 spread sheets. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be going out to Google and I'm going to be hitting their API, their version 4, and specifically their spreadsheets. Now here, this is where we're going to want to enter in the sheet. So I'm creating a variable here called sheet, and that's going to be the name of the sheet, or the sheet that I want to select. So I'm going to say sheet equals sheet here. Then I'm going to look up values. And what am I going to look up? I'm going to look up whatever I pass into this function, which is the query. Then I need to pass my API token. So I'm going to say key equals key, like so. All right, so then I'm going to say key equals my key, and that's going to put that in there. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I have my connection. It is going to Google APIs. It is going to the version 4, spreadsheets, sheets, values, queries, key, right? And then I'm having my key and I'm going to be passing my sheet. So where do I get this sheet? Well, I get this from the URL up here. So I can't zoom in on it, but essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to grab this whole document just so you can see it easier. And I'm going to delete this first part all the way up to the /d, and then I'm going to delete this right here. So that is actually my sheet. That string right there is my sheet. So again, that's up here. Right there. All right. So next thing what I'm going to do is I am going to say if there is a WP error, so if there isn't an error on the connection, I'm going to do something. So first thing it's going to do, it's going to go out, it's going to set whatever it is from the connection into here. Then I'm going to check to see if there's an error with that connection. If there isn't one that's being sent from WordPress, I'm going to connection equals JSON decode, and then I'm going to go WP remote retrieve body connection true. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am going to retrieve the body information from this connection, so from this API request, and I'm going to JSON decode it and set it equal to this connection. So then I'm going to say if is set connection values results equals connection values. All right. So first, I have results set to false. So if nothing is returned from this connection, so essentially what's going to happen is that I'm going to get the connection, I'm going to go WP get, I'm going to enter in this sheet, I'm going to enter in my query that I'm going to be sending, and then I'm going to enter in my API key. Then, if there isn't an error, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the body from that connection, and I'm going to decode it. Then, I'm going to check to see if there's any values. And if there are values, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to results. And then I'm going to send back the results. So if there are no results, it's going to be false. If there are results, it should bring up the values here. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to test this. So let's go ahead and I'm going to say query equals, and then I'm going to put in the name of my sheet. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up a new tab. I zoomed in on this thing, which is real nice. Okay, so my sheet name is sheet 1 down here. So what I can now send is I can send in queries like I normally would into Google Sheet. Meaning, like if I wanted to select this C1, I can say, if I wanted to set it to C2, I can go equals C2. Oh, equals A2. And it moves over. So let's say I want to select these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say query. So I have sheet 1. And then I am going to put in exclamation point. And I want to go ahead and I want to select A let's select A1. So A1 should be data. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say results array. It's going to return this as an array. Get Google Sheet data query. Okay. Then I'm going to print my results array. And I'll go ahead and I will prefix it just to make it a bit prettier. And then I'm going to make sure that I kill this script. All right. So let's see what happens. So I got nothing. Query. All right, so this is great. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and let's go ahead and test some things. So I'm going to say echo query. Let's troubleshoot this out. So my query is being selected. Echo connection. Okay, so it is printing an array. So let's go print R. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pre this. So I'm trying to see if there's a problem. So what I can do is I can actually hit this URL. Let's see what happens. Okay, so values data. So it's pulling it. Okay, so let's see. Oh, that's what my error is. I just put in connect right here. All right. So it's just a little spelling error, it looks like. So let's go ahead and check this now. There we go. So it is pulling my data there. Awesome. So now if I wanted to, let's say, select all of this column A, what I can do is I can just go in here and I can type in A. A. And there you go. So now I have my row 1, 2, and 3. So now I'm pulling my data. All right, so a couple things that we'll want to do is that every time we hit this page, it's actually making a request out to the Google API, which isn't bad, but sometimes what you can do is you might want to cache it. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and we will change this to be WP cache add. And what I'm going to add is I'm going to name it to the query, and I'm going to store the results. Okay. And I want to make sure that I do this inside my if statement, so it only adds that cache if there are values. So what this does is it's going to add some cache. It's going to use the WP cache to add this content, so that way it doesn't have to go out and make another query and request. Okay. So then what I need to do is I've added my cache. Now I need to check to see if there is a cache, and if there is a cache, I'm going to return the cache. If not, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to retrieve all this information. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll wrap this in an if statement. So I'm going to say if WP cache get query. So if that cache query, because what this cache does is it has to save it by a unique identifier or a string. And my unique identifier in this case is my query, which is A1 exclamation point A through A. I'll just clean this up a little bit by indenting that. Okay, so if a cache doesn't exist, then go ahead and make if a connection isn't aired, then go ahead and make the connection and get the JSON, and then go ahead and print the values if it is set. Turn it into an array, or basically retrieve the array and send it to us. Next I'm going to do is I'm going to say else, I'll put it up here, else I want to return WP get cache query. All right, so if there isn't a cache and the connection is made, then go ahead and get the values, add a cache by the query name, that's what we're going to call it. And what we're going to store is we're going to restore these results. Else, what we're going to do is if a cache does exist, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the cache and we're just going to return the results. So since we saved it as an array, it should return as an array. So what we'll do is we'll hit this page again, and you'll notice it didn't really make a difference, but it should be pulling from this cache. All right. So next things that we might want to do is to kind of make this more secure. We might want to move this key and this sheet into our WP config. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up because the WP config shouldn't change between the installs. So I'm going to go down here into WP config, and I am going to, somewhere down below, I'm going to define a new definition, and I'm going to say Google Sheet key, and then I'm going to say define Google Sheet ID, something like that. Because to me the name is probably better than the name that I have it. So I'm going to go back to my functions. So I have my sheet, and I'm going to say that's the ID. I'll copy this down here, put it into the string. Then I'm going to go this here, and I'm going to put it into this string. Then I'm going to take this key and I am going to have it equal, it's Google Sheet ID, and have it equal. Okay, so now nothing should change, it should still work. So all I did is I moved this information into my WP config, and again, that's because if I want to check in GitHub, I shouldn't really be checking in this WP config, and I just don't want to have these IDs living in this function. I can clean up this code a little bit more by coming into here, and I'm going to go to the key, and so that's not going to work like that because PHP doesn't know what to do with it, so I have to concatenate it by putting a quotation, period, concatenating in the key, then another quotation. Doesn't look as pretty, but I want to make it into one line. So I'm going to say this Google Sheet ID, and I'm going to go concatenate like so. And I'll remove this, and we will refresh this page, and boom, there you go. So again, if I wanted to make another query, let's say I wanted to do multiple requests, you can. Just make sure to remember that every time you do something like this, so if I'm going to do another request, so let's say I only want to select A2, just remember that every time you're doing this, you are actually making another request to Google, and you don't want to put too many API requests out there. So it's better to grab as much data as you can in one array and then format that array out. So again, this is how you'll notice that I'm making two requests. So one of them is doing the where I set the query this way. This one is doing it directly into my Google Sheet. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for sheet 1 and I'm looking for A2. Now, let's say I wanted to have another sheet, sheet 2. Let's say I wanted this B right here on this second sheet. All I'd have to do is that I'd go to sheet 2, exclamation point, and then that is A1, like so. There you go. But again, it would be better for you to, let's say you wanted to pull in a lot of data, it would be better for you to do something like this, A through B. So that makes you're making one request, and you'll notice that you're getting the column So you're getting the column and then the rows. All right, so I hope that you found this helpful. Go ahead and add it to your WordPress projects and see what you can do with the connection between a Google Sheet and WordPress. Don't be afraid to look at the Google Sheets API. They have the version 4, that's what we're running up here. They got a lot of really cool things that you can do with their API and their API requests, and just hack away and have some fun.